Now we move on to the next paper. The next paper is by Sri Venkatakrishnan, PA. He is going to present. The topic of his paper is the uniqueness of Yoga Karnika among the yogic texts. A few words of introduction to introduce Sri Venkatakrishnan. So Sri Venkatakrishnan is a research scholar pursuing his PhD in the Hatha Yoga text itself, and then he's a yoga practitioner, yoga teacher, yoga trainer in the tradition of Bihar School of Yoga. And before taking a plunge into this field of yoga teaching and training in the profession of yoga, so he was with the engineering industry at the middle level management for about 15 years. So with that, he has such a professional background, and now he's into yoga and yoga research. So now I welcome Sri Venkatakrishnan ji to present his paper on Yoga Karnika.
Namaste Jairam ji. Pranams to everyone. Let me start with the prayer. The first Mangala Sloka written by the Aghorananda Natha. Akandam Sachidanandam Nirvikaram Paratparam Vandeham Sakaladharam Shri Gurum Shri Jaganmayam Aghorananda Nathena Kriyate Yoga Karnika Sadhakanam Hitarthaya Bahuyatnena Sammuda. Sorry. Yoga Karnika was authored by Swami Aghoranandanatha, and Karnika means a jewel bone in the ear. The Natha Sampradaya, as we know, the yogis wear the Karnika. Karnika also means the pericard, covering over the seeds in the middle of the lotus. And allegorically, we can say this book contains the core concepts of the wisdom of yoga. And it has around 1344 slokas classified into 15 pada, each covering a topic. And generally, the Hatha Yoga topics are as below. Shadanga Yoga, leaving Yama and Niyama, we have Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. And all of us know Ashtanga Yoga. When you add Yama and Niyama, it becomes Ashtanga Yoga. And the Hatha Yoga texts deal with Kumbhaka, Mudra, Bandha. Some of the texts deal with Laya Yoga. Sometimes it is in unison with Kundalini Yoga. And we have Japa Yoga. Now, let us have an overview about Aghoranandanatha, what he has done. He has written 15 chapters, but for the sake of understanding, I have divided first 2 chapters in a row and 4 more chapters on the final row. The middle one deals with the Ashtanga Yoga, not in the exact way. It's sort of, he has kept it in a juxtaposed manner. He starts with pranayama and he introduces asana and the kriyas also, dasha kriyas, and then he prepares, he gives sanketa on the practices. Then he deals with pratyahara. In pranayama, the interesting thing is he talks about the place of practice, time of practice, session, diet, seat, etc., like any other yogic text. But the specialty is he quotes one sloka where he says pranama itself can purify the need for shatkarma. When other yogic texts give a lot of importance to shatkarma, shatkriya, he says pranayama itself can do that prana shuddhi. Then he talks about in the sadhana sanketa, he introduces some asanas, which are basically classical asanas used for meditation. And in pratyahara, he gives example of tortoise and sun getting into dawn like that, the senses have to absorb themselves into the self, and that is pratyahara, he says. And the next one is kumbhaka. He talks about 8 kumbhakas, and he also gives quote about 7 kumbhakas, and obviously he talks about kevala kumbhaka. And in the pranayama, he gives importance to the um, Nadi Shuddhi pranayama more, and gives importance to Antara Kumbhaka. Then let us move to mudras. I'm just going through so that we can go to the main section. In the mudras, he talks about 10 mudras, and then he talks about 20 mudras. We have to understand Agauranandanatha arguably lived during the 18th century, and in those times, obviously, the scriptures are not available like now, the present era. So he has compiled compiled from a lot of sources, and he has it's a beautiful compilation of and the slokas under different topics. And in the mudra, he covers obviously the Mahamudra, Mahaveda Mudra, Mahabandha, Kechari, Udiyana, Mulabandha, Jalandhara Bandha, and he talks about Shakti Chalani, Viparita Karani, Vajrini also. And the next one is Dharana, and in Dharana, he talks about 12 parts of the body on which you can do Dharana. That is one important thing. It starts from the big toe of the right foot and ends up with the Brahmarandra. And he talks about Dharana on the Pancha Tattvas. Obviously, Pancha Tattvas is Pancha Bhutas, but he asks us to visualize in chakras for each respective element and do Dharana so as to win over that particular tattva. And let us go to the chapter of Dhyana. In that he says, if you do Dhyana on Ishta Devata, you get Siddhis. And if you do Nirguna Dhyana, you attain liberation. And one beautiful visualization he has taken from quotes from Garanda Samhita, in which Ishta Devata is visualized in the heart center under a Kalpaka Vriksha. It's a beautiful one. And he quotes Goraksha, where Dhyana is done on the Bhrumadhya. And first we start with Shiva Dhyanam, and we take the Nirguna aspect of Shiva, and then do that Dhyanam to attain liberation. And he talks about Stula Dhyana, Sukshma Dhyana, Jyotir Dhyana. And the next one is he talks about Samadhi, and he quotes from Kashi Kanda and Goraksha. And one important sloka, he says, Samadhi is not being affected by the sensory stimulus attack on sense organs. That you are not affected by, I mean, you are absent to the hearing, looking, and sense of touch. Like that, you are free from all the sensual experiences, sensory experiences, that you are in Samadhi. And let us move to the column on the other side, the Laya Yoga, where Laya, as we know, it is the yoga of absorption by having one particular alambanam to do the focus, the dharana. By doing dharana on one particular alambana, we lose ourselves and absorb ourselves with the totality, that is Laya Yoga. And he quotes Dattatreya Samhita, talking about Nasikagra Drishti and Bhrumadhya Drishti, and also a light in the right foot. And he says even no step gazing, he quotes Swarodaya, by doing the no step gazing also, you can attain Laya Yoga. Then he talks about asanas. He quotes 32 asanas. And as I told, he has relegated the regular Shuddhi into Gata Shodhana, purification of body, to 14th chapter. It seems he has given more importance to the subtler practices. We can find out like the first chapter, second chapter, and the third chapter itself comprise more than half the slokas. He has given a lot of importance to pranayama also. He has relegated Gata Shodhana and do's and don'ts, the prohibitions and prescriptions in the yoga practice, to the final 2 chapters. In Gata Shodhana, he deals in detail about the main Shatkriya practices. Now, Agoranandanatha seems that he is more interested more in the farm worship and the mantra sadhana, which is being shown in the first 2 chapters. Obviously, he has taken the tantric rituals and Vedic rituals too. Let us move. The dinacharya, as soon as you get up after Dantadavanam, what do you do is, before even taking bath, he says one should do Guru Vandana. In Guru Vandana, he wants us to imagine a white lotus, and in the white lotus, visualize Guru wearing a white dress, but with 2 hands and 2 eyes, not as a forehand or in any other way, with Shakti. And after doing Guru Vandana, you do Tarpanam Manasika, in Manasika way, on his right hand. Then he talks about Chaura Ganesha Dhyanam. This Chaura Ganesha Dhyanam is taken because whatever other mantras we chant and we attain tejas, that can be taken by Ganesha is the belief system he is propounding. So he says Chaura Ganesha Dhyanam has to be done before getting into mantra sadhana. And he talks, he visualizes Bhujangini Devi in the Mooladhara, in a spatical, on the top of a spatical linga. She is in 3.5 circles, and you have to visualize her, and she is visualized as a Devi, and he gives shlokas to do Dhyanaman, the Bhujangini Devi.
Venkatakrishnan ji,
Anji,
can you summarize?
Yeah, sure, I'll make it fast.
Thank you.
And he talks about bathing rituals, and generally he talks about taking bath in the rivers. But if you are compelled to take bath in an unknown place, he says you have to give pancha pindas to your mains, that is your forefathers. Then while bathing, he says make a triangle and then put the bija of the Ishta Devata, and visualize that bija on the top of the water as Tejomaya, and then do Dhyanam on it, and then do Tarpanam to it. And then he gives importance to Sandhya Vandanam. And this Sandhya Vandanam, he says, if you have wet cloth, you should do in the river. If you are having dry cloth, you should do outside, sitting in the nearby place. And then you do Gayatri Devi Dhyanam. He talks about Gayatri Japa also in a very enhanced manner. Then let us move to Mantra Japa visualizations. He talks about Mantra Siddhi, how to attain Mantra Siddhi. Whenever we chant a mantra, we have to attain, if you want to attain Siddhi, he gives some methodologies. The respective form of God is there, means if you have a Bija mantra, then the Bija mantra has to be invoked in each chakra and visualizing the form of God. And if you have a big syllable of mantra, let's say Ashtakshari, and if you are going to do it on Vishnu, then he says 8 parts you have to visualize the aksharas in the body of Vishnu and then do dhyana to attain mantra siddhi. Then he talks about bija mantra for each chakra, do the arohanam on the chakras and do avarohanam while the energy flows through you. Then he talks about 9 chakras. We know 7 chakras. The extra chakras he is talking about is Madhyama chakra in the center of the palate and Mahashunya above the Brahmarandram. Then Lakshadi Yoga, he talks about focusing on parts of the body, 16 adharas starting from the toe up to the Brahmarandra. And he talks about 5 goddesses. Interesting thing is he talks about respective 5 herbal powders also. Dhruva, Vijayapatra. Vijayapatra, I believe it is cannabis. And then Bilva, Tulasi, Nirgunti. Nirgunti is Nochi in Tamil. He takes all these leaves and you have to make a churna, do the dhyana on 5 goddesses, and then take this churna, chant the mantras, and it gives you Panchamara Yoga Siddhi. Then he talks about Japa Yoga, and Japa he says Vachaka Japa, Upamshu Japa, Manasa Japa, we know. And he talks about rules for place, count, what cloths you should wear, like I mentioned about wet cloths in the river when you do Japa. And the counts, he talks about how to count. Then he gives the mantra Om meaning in a very elaborate manner. And one interesting thing about Manasik Japa is Vachaka Japa, we know audibly chanting the mantras. Upamshu is whispering the mantras. And Manasa Japa, he says one should contemplate on the meaning of the mantra. That seems to be different from others. Generally, Manasa Japa is considered as silently chanting the mantra. Here he says you have to contemplate on the meaning just instead of just chanting the mantra mentally. And unique factors I'll summarize. This text is sure for a mumukshu. And first 2 chapters from the importance he has given, it seems the mumukshu has to have bhakti to Guru, Devata rituals. Then only this particular text will appeal. And he prioritizes tantric rituals to be followed on daily basis. Then importance is given to Guru, Ishta Devata and Mantra. And he has written Mangala shlokas for each and every chapter. Of course, it denotes his Bhakti Bhava to Adinatha and his Guru also. In some of the Mangala shlokas, he has mentioned his Guru. And the importance of Bija Mantra and its connection with respective deities are dealt very elaborately. And each topic has copious shlokas collected from diverse source books. Asana and Sadgriyas, as I told you before, introduced, they are only introduced first, but dealt in detail only in the later chapters. Dhanyavadaha. Namaste.
Thank you, Venkatakrishnan-ji, for that overview on the text Yoga Karnika. And as you presented, I could observe that this text has a lot, probably as you mentioned, this text belongs to 18th century, around 18th century. So this seems to have been influenced by Yoga Yajnavalkya Samhita because of the views that you presented, that he prefers pranayama over kriyas for purification, and then the dharana practices, all these the descriptions that you described. So he is resembling or probably is influenced by Yoga Yajnavalkya Samhita.
He quotes Yajnavalkya Samhita also.
Yeah. So yeah, and I have a couple of questions. I will also bring up questions by other participants here. One thing is, does the author mention the purpose of this compilation that he has made? Why he has made such a compilation?
As far as I have studied, he hasn't made any specific shloka like that.
Because in Hatha Yoga Pradipika, we see Bhrantya Bahumata Dhvante Raja Yoga Majanatam. So people are confused about various paths leading towards Raja Yoga. So Swatmarama, Swatmarama, write this Hatha Yoga treatise so that I present a clarity about moving systematically to Raja Yoga through Hatha Yoga. So that objective is mentioned in Hatha Yoga Pradipika. I was just looking for this.
So from what I understand, he has given a lot of importance to the first two chapters talking about Tantra, and he seems to be diluting later from his point of view, and that is why it seems he has relegated the asana practice and Shadgira practice to the final chapters. He seems to be giving a lot of importance to the visualization and up to if you add the first three chapters, it comprises more than half the text, that is including pranayama. It's more than 600 slokas.
So it's a poetic, it means it's a metrical treatise and not a prose one, Yoga Karnika.
Yes, sir, it's mostly compilations from other sources.
Okay. So and one you mentioned about a lot of rituals in this context. So so do you see, does it show influences of the south or the north in the context of those practices?
While he talks about Sandhya Vandanam and all, he talks about Tantric Sandhya Vandanam, where you take the energy from Tejas from the river and then breathing it through left and then exhaling through right and all. I find that I haven't seen anything like that in South. It should be a Tantric Sandhya Vandanam practice probably by the Tantric people in North.
So yeah, there is a question from Dr. Subramaniam. He wants to know more about the Chaura Ganesha Dhyanam. So what is Chaura Ganesha?
Yes, Chaura Ganesha Dhyanam. He talks about, he says that Ganesha Chaura, we know the meaning. If you do not worship Ganesha and if you do Dhyanam, Mantra Dhyanam on other deities, he poses that Ganesha will take away all the tejas. So to pacify Ganesha, you have to start with Ganesha Dhyanam, he says. And he talks about Ankusha Bija and then Bijas used in different places. Like he asks us to do Nyasam with a specific Bija mantra on the eyes and the nose and the ears, and the heart and all, so that the Ganesha is satisfied first. That is Chaura Ganesha Dhyanam.
Thank you. And it was also interesting to note that you mentioned about Dinacharya mentioned in this. So yes. Yoga Dinacharya is also described because in the Jyotsna commentary to Hatha Yoga Pradipika, in the context of pranayama, before commencing the pranayama techniques, so the commentator Brahmananda describes a yogic Dinacharya. So probably he's this commentary of Brahmananda is later. Probably he again further refers to this Yoga Karnika for his inputs, it seems.
Possibly, sir. This this author seems to have compared a lot from different sources. As I told you, he wants his students to, probably in that time, he wants his students to get exposed to all the possible things, because under his guidance, he is confident that Shishyas go in the right way without getting confused.
So yeah, I see no further relevant current connected questions to this topic. So thank you very much, Venkata Krishnanji, for this presentation.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you all. Thank you.